That's the chortling you hear in the background of the big man, Damien Woody, joining us in studio to give us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. All right, real quickly, before we get into anything like game-oriented, when you won your first one with the New England Patriots, because we talked about this, the Patriots were never any good until they won that. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, yeah, whatever. You have that crappy stadium up in Foxborough somewhere, which is in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
You guys are kind of a joke. It flipped the franchise completely when you guys won that first one. What was that feeling like?
I finally saw the light. Literally, the whole season, you feel like you were in a dark tunnel because even when we won, we felt like we lost.
Right.
We never felt like we were good enough, that we were doing things the right way. And then when that confetti finally hits you, like, damn, we achieved it. We really did it. This is the first time you could really exhale from the grind. This was when the CBA was different. When you were hitting, you were really hitting in practice, and you like, boy, it was all worth it. Kind of like that Bill Parcells quote. That's why you lift all them weights. And it's like that's when it hits you.
So what is Malcolm Jenkins and the rest of the Eagles in for when they land in their city, when you went back to your city?
Oh, my God. I think their situation was much different from when we first went out because at the time, Boston is still a Red Sox town. It wasn't like the number one. Philadelphia is Eagles. Like that town has been dying for a championship, especially with the Eagles. So I heard the interview coming in. Malcolm, everyone kept, he just kept saying, I can't wait to get back to Philly. Trust me, Philly can't wait for those guys to get there. I'm still surprised that city is still standing because, I mean, that's big time by those guys. And congrats to Malcolm Jenkins and the whole Eagles organization.
Well, look, it is. And the amazing thing, we had a live shot on SportsCenter, and the streets were empty. I really thought they'd still be going strong.
Oh, they're all getting ready for work today.
That's what's happening.
It was the purge.
That's what's happening.
It was the purge.
Give us this 4-hour nap, and then we're back out again. Damien obviously played on the offensive line, and it's interesting, Damien, because we talked about how the defensive lines for both teams were going to have to step up and make plays, and quite frankly, neither one of them did. I thought the one unit on each team that really sort of went over expectations had to be the O-line for both squads, right?
Absolutely. We always say we're overworked and underappreciated, and that's literally the case because the only time people talk about us usually is when we give up, we get a holding call or we give up a sack. But if you look at both units in that game, the Eagles and the Patriots offensive lines, they were fantastic. And we know the Eagles, they have rushers in waves. They bring guys in waves off the bench. And for that Patriots offensive line to kind of withstand that attack from that Eagles pass rush, I thought was really, really impressive.
Yeah, and the Eagles did it without arguably their best or one of the best left tackles in football, Jason Peters. And they did it without Carson Wentz. I mean, we always talk about, Mike, how the season is a war of attrition. You have to survive. These two teams, I thought, summed that up perfectly with all the injuries that they overcame. But Philadelphia, my God, no Wentz, no Peters, no Sproles, no Jordan Hicks, no Maragos. I mean, the things they were able to do and just sort of find a way. It's remarkable. It's very similar to what the Patriots have done all these years.
Well, that's why like I heard Tom Brady in the post presser, nobody's going to feel sorry for us, and nobody's going to feel sorry for you when you have injuries. Guess what? Everyone has injuries in the National Football League. You lose a guy, you got to plug in and you got to keep going. And it's really you really got to give props to the coaching staff, Doug Peterson, to be able to withstand all of those injuries. We're not talking about scrubs here. We're talking about big-time players, a guy in Carson Wentz who was potentially the league MVP. How many teams can withstand your starting quarterback, your potential league MVP going down and still make it to the Super Bowl and win it? So you got to give credit to the Eagles coaching staff.
So when you play in sports, no matter the sport, your goal is to win a championship in that sport. And you understand when you're out on the field, there can be plays where you're looked at as the hero, and there can be plays where you're looked at as, oh, man, didn't go well there. And the offensive line is usually a life of anonymity.
Yep.
So take us down there and take us to a guy like Shaq Mason, the right guard.
Yeah.
So you get to the play where, again, they're blocking well the entire game. There's not that much pressure, especially from that Philly line, as you said, that can rotate guys in. And you get to the play where Fletcher Cox is the right defensive tackle. They slide that way. And here Shaq Mason is left one-on-one with Brandon Graham, an end who's sliding down playing D tackle. and gives up the only sack of the game. A good rush by Graham, certainly, but Mason gets beat. So take us down there on the field, amongst his other line mates and amongst him on just that emotion.
Well, Mike, I mean, literally, there's no other position on a team where you could literally, you have 70 plays in a game. You could play well for 69.
Yep.
You give up that one, and everyone remembers that one. And unfortunately, in that situation, Brandon Graham had a critical play on that one play, the strip sack,
right,
fumble, and Derek Barnett got recovered the fumble. But listen, you got to give credit to the Eagles for setting up the situation, because we knew going into the game, the one thing that the Patriots are going to do, they're going to take out the guys that they feel like are going to be, they don't want to wreak havoc on the game. Fletcher Cox is a guy that can wreak havoc on the game. They double team Fletcher Cox. The Eagles made the subtle adjustment, putting Brandon Graham inside. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you from just playing every position on the offensive line, there's nothing worse than having a defensive end, a really fast guy sliding down and playing in the interior. Because guys that offensive linemen that play in the interior like that, we like infighting. We want to be in a phone booth and just battling you like that. When you get a smaller guy, now all of a sudden he has more wiggle. The offensive line sliding opposite. So it's like the ocean partying in that situation, and it's literally the worst situation you could be in. One little wiggle move by Brandon Graham, next thing you know, he's putting his paw on Tom Brady, creating the sack fumble. And that's all she wrote.
It's tough, because just what you said, it can be all the 99% great plays in that one play, and unfortunately, that's just going to stick with him for a long, long time. Right. Yeah, it's a shame.
It totally, you're right. Unfortunately for him, it totally changed the game. One guy that couldn't change the game, Damien, was a guy who never got on the field, and that was cornerback Malcolm Butler. He had played almost 98% of the defensive snaps in the regular season. He was a day late coming to the Super Bowl because he said he was sick and in the hospital. They said it wasn't a health choice. They made decisions that he wasn't going to be out there. Look, you've played under Bill. You know how he is. What did you take away from the fact that Malcolm Butler, who just 3 years ago saved a Super Bowl win for them with an interception, never got a single defensive snap in that game?
Well, obviously it was bigger than matchups. This wasn't a matchup decision. It was something bigger than that, because, again, like you said, this is a guy who played like 98% of the snaps in all the different packages, and the Patriots have a lot of different packages defensively. This guy was on the field. And now in the Super Bowl, the biggest game of the year, this guy's relegated to special teams? Look, really? You're going to try to tell us that this whole thing is about matchups?
Matchups.
I mean, there's matchups going on all year long, and this guy was out there for all the different matchups. But now in the biggest game of the year, now you want to tell us that this is about matchups. Come on now, this is not going to fly. Obviously, this is something bigger, and Coach Belichick is not, he's not going to put it out there.
Well, we're going to find out at some point.
It's going to leak somehow.
Their story was they used a lot of big nickel, which is 3 safeties and 2 corners, and they had some bigger corners out there. But like you said,
you mean to tell me Malcolm Butler's not one of their best corners?
Come on, I completely agree with you. Man. Remember, he was a day late because he was sick and in the hospital, so got to the Super Bowl a day late. There's no doubt if there's more to it, it's going to come out at some point to find out what went on. It's an unrestricted free agent, so a high probability he's not going to be back in a Patriot uniform.
Well, he said it after the game. He said they gave up on me, and then they asked why. He said, "Man, I ain't Miss Cleo. I don't know."
Yeah,
which is a pretty good line.
Yeah, it was.
Golic&Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Damien, always glad to have you inside with the studio.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you breaking down the infighting and what went on in 2 units that played really, really well. And unfortunately, one guy's going to be remembered for the one play that may have changed the game.